It's unbelievable the job that Rick Pitino has done there, and I'm all the way in on Big East basketball. Right, I grew up on Big East basketball. I've watched Big East basketball more than anything else for basically my entire adult life, and I don't know if I can remember seeing the Garden the way that it's been the last month anytime St. John's has a home game there. The way that that city has kind of embraced that program and that team and the run that they're on and how they play and the style of basketball that they play and the fact that they have Rick Pitino, who is one of their own, coaching the program. It's such a fun marriage of coaching pedigree, of the program, of a fan base, and of a building. I've said this over and over, guys, and we can talk about the specifics of the game in a second. But I've said over and over that the best place to watch a non-conference basketball game, a big non-conference basketball game, is Madison Square Garden. When you
Oh
have
yeah.
the two fan bases in there, when you have, it was the best in like 2014 when you would have half UConn and half Syracuse in a Big
Mhm.
East tournament semifinal game. Or, the nights when you get Duke fans up there playing whoever. I'm sure it's going to be awesome when Duke plays Illinois on Saturday night up there. It's been like that for St. John's games, except it's all red. And I don't know that I've ever seen the Garden all red. And it's turned into an actual home court environment, Madison Square Garden for the Johnnies. It's such a good thing and a fun thing for college basketball. And to see them go on this run, it sucks that it's not UConn winning, but if it's not going to be UConn, let's let it be Rick Pitino, man. He's a great story. He's a great coach. And Latula, this has been, I don't know how you guys feel about it. It's been a lot of fun to see the St. John's basketball program come back into relevance in this way.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth because it's not lost on me at all to see, just realize kind of how cool it is to see Rick Pitino leading a program like this, like St. John's, and selling out NBA arenas. That for a college team, like that's not the easiest thing to do. We've seen plenty of college teams that play in NBA arenas that can't create a true college atmosphere, but that felt like it today, and it's felt like
Mm-hmm.
that for the last few months with St. John's. So. He's one of the last guys left of the old guard, and just to see the way I think some of the coaches from that old guard have fizzled out, and the way their teams played, and how they kind of lost their teams. Rick Pitino hasn't done that. Like these dudes play for him, and he's still. You can see him in the huddles. You can see him during timeouts. He's still bringing it the same way he did 25, 30 years ago. And there's just the energy hasn't stopped with him, and it translates onto the court. We'll get into the game, but I agree with you, Rob. Man, it's been really cool to see that.
It's
There's
fun.
there's definitely I don't mean to cut you off, Charles, but there's
No,
definitely a joke to be made here about how Rick Pitino was embracing the NIL era because he was embracing the NIL era before NIL was a thing.
well, and that's kind of where I wanted to go because I agree. Like to me, Rick Pitino, obviously there was all the stuff with Adidas and all that, but he's not exactly like this warm, fuzzy, savory kind of, buttoned up guy. But he's a guy with that New York grit, right? He's got that accent. He's got that look to him. He's got those, the white suits from time to time. He's kind of got that whole mafia, kind of vibe to him. And he fits so beautifully in Madison Square Garden at that school, at that small private school. And for me, like he's made the Northeast, him and Dan Hurley have made the Northeast sexy again. Like that's what I grew up with that in Syracuse, Georgetown, and all these programs. I'm a DePaul fan, and that was a school that played the Marquettes and all that. Like the small Catholic schools used to have that place in the world, and to me, to kind of have New York City and to have UConn and to have kind of that vibe going on in the Big East, like you said, it's pretty damn sexy. But Patino's a guy to me. We've seen Tony Bennett leave the game. We've seen, in the past couple of weeks, Leonard Hamilton left because of an NIL disaster. We saw Jim Larinaga leave. We've seen Krzyzewski, Roy Williams, Jay Wright. Go through the list of guys. And yet you have a guy that everybody kind of looked at like and said, little sleazy in some respects, but might really translate well. It's the same thing I say about, and he's a friend of mine, but it's the same thing, Rob, I say about Bruce Pearl. Because, like, Bruce, to me, the era, the way it changed like Bruce can play ball with the best of them now.
Yeah, and that's kind of what that's where Patino has really embraced this, where he's leaning into it. And I think it might have helped that, he spent those 3 years in Greece and he spent some time at Iona. So it's not like he's been dealing with it at the highest level like some of these other guys have. And I think there's part of him is like, I'm going to prove to everybody that doubted me when I left, to prove everyone that had questions about me or said things about me. I'm going to prove every single one of them wrong. I also think there's a part of him that is just, he doesn't know how to function when he's not coaching a basketball program, right? How many people think about how much money he had in the bank when he lost his job at Louisville, and what did he decide to do? Oh, I'm going to go coach Panathinaikos, right, out in Greece. And now living in Athens is nice, but it's still, you're going to Greece where you don't speak the language and you're going to go try to coach professional basketball teams. The thing I love about it is what he does as a coach. It has not changed in like the analytics era with pace and space and all this. I got a stat for you guys. I sent this to our social team earlier. I'm curious if you guys can get this answer correct. Since UConn won the national title in 2011 as a team that shot 32.9% from three, there have only been 2 teams in college basketball that have been shooting 33.1% or lower and reached the Final Four. Can you guys name those 2 teams since 2012 that have been able to do it? Off the top of your head.
South Carolina.
Nope. South Carolina was a 33.4% three-point shooting team. It was Louisville in 2012, shooting 31.8%. And it was Louisville in 2013, shooting 33.1%. And who was the coach of both of those Louisville programs at the time, Mike? Rick Pitino. So here's what I'm going to tee you up with this. Let's do a little. The Johnnies shoot 29.3% from three. I actually went through on KenPom today and I did the math out. There have been 12 teams in total since 1997 that shot 29.3% or lower from three and got an at-large bid to the tournament, let alone won a game or made it to the Final Four. Got an at-large bid to the dance. That's what the Johnnies are shooting this season. Does this team, the way that they play, the style that they play, the force turnovers, get offensive rebounds. We're not going to shoot a lot of threes, but we're going to kill you with mid-range jumpers from Kadari Richmond and RJ Lewis. Does that translate into being able to make a run in the NCAA tournament in the year of our Lord 2025?
I think it does. I mean, to this point, again, we look at analytics and you see, teams wanting to force mid-range jumpers, and St. John's continues to shoot them and continues to make them. And they've done this time and time again throughout the year, but there's something that goes beyond statistics with this St. John's team. Like, we can look and try to crunch numbers and do analytics, but it's what makes really good coaches, and it's what makes playing hard and playing your ass off. It's what allows you to overcome some of those certain things, and that's what St. John's does. Because we saw it today in this game. Creighton tried early. They wanted to get early offense badly. And they were able to do it because they got stops. They were able to get out. And you want to do anything you can to not play the half-court defense of St. John's. And so that's what they did. Because the thing with when you're playing against St. John's, I mean, there's a lot of coaches that sit there and say, well, you know what? You got to pass up the good shot for a great shot. You may not get a great shot. You probably won't get a great shot against St. John's. You might not get a good shot against St. John's. So you need to take these shots early and often, like Creighton was doing earlier in that game. The issue was once St. John's started putting the ball in the basket and could set up their press, it was tough. And then on top of that, like we look at these teams that, don't shoot it well, but they guard really well. Those teams don't typically play with a really frenetic offensive pace. And obviously it's a Rick Pitino coach team, and St. John's does that. And they played with that same type of pace today. They turned the ball over 5 times. So you're thinking, hey, we at least get chances for runouts when they turn it over. 4 of those turnovers were dead ball turnovers. So they're setting up their press anyways. So it's amazing to see it. And like the last point I'll mention with St. John's, because it's been something I've been wanting to touch on all season with them. Stephen Ashworth was 94 for 97 from the free throw line today, coming into this game today. And he misses 2. And there's no surprise it happened in this game today, because there is a mental toll that is taken on you when you play against St. John's.